500 years ago, two massive armies assembled on opposite ends of a large valley floor in the Middle East. And as they arrayed themselves against each other, in the balance hung freedom, righteousness, justice, flow of history. From one of the massive armies emerged a hero, a warrior who typified the strength of that army. His name was Goliath, 8 foot tall, well-muscled, incredible resume as a man of war. And emerging from the other army came a teenage boy whose resume read, shepherd. That teenage boy took a rock, put it in a sling, and then hurled that rock with all his might right toward that giant. And under the guidance of God, that rock was right on target. And the giant fell, and the tides of war changed, and the flow of history was altered. Now, a human being is far more substantial of an instrument than a rock. At least most of us. And we've got to believe that a human life, if launched under the guidance of God, finds its way right on target. It could actually change the world. If you were here last week, you know that we discussed the fact that God wants every one of our lives to be lived on target. We kind of said it this way. There's this spiritual bullseye that God wants all of us living in. And when we live in that bullseye, we experience the full measure of all that Jesus has in store for us. And we pose the question, where exactly do you think that spiritual bullseye is? And remember, we had a number of answers. Some might say it's attending weekend services as a seeker or learner. Man, that's a great place to be. You'll get experiences there you'd never have anywhere else. But it's not the bullseye. And some would say, well, it's connected to a circle of friends as a fellow traveler, that they help each other and their journey through life. That's a great place to be. You'll experience things there you'll never experience anywhere else. But it's not the bullseye. And some may say, well, if you roll up your sleeves and you serve on a ministry team in a church as a co-laborer, that's it. Well, that's a great place to be. You'll experience things there you'll never experience anywhere else. But it's not the bullseye. The bullseye, as we described it last week, is when we engage the world as a spiritual catalyst. It's really when I make the heartbeat of Jesus the drumbeat of my life. And I do whatever I can do to persuade people who are disconnected from God to trust Jesus for forgiveness and for the power to live as we were intended to live. To trust Jesus, not to trust the church, not to trust a doctrinal statement, but to trust a person, Jesus, as the one capable of wiping clean our moral slate and empowering us to live as we know we ought to live in our heart of hearts. And when we engage people in such a way to persuade them, that's the bullseye. That's where we experience the full measure of all that Jesus has in store for us. That's when we experience God most profoundly. And that's when we fulfill our destiny most completely. And that's when our Christianity works most effectively. Right there. And remember, we kind of ended last week by saying, God wants you in the bullseye. And God's at work in your life right now in ways you may not understand, to get you to live in the bullseye. And I have no doubt that for many of us, it might be easy to believe that there is a bullseye. It might be easy to believe that God wants people in the bullseye. It might even be easy to believe that God's at work to get people there. But you know where many of you struggle? You struggle believing that that applies to you. Your struggle is in believing that God wants you in the bullseye. That God's working to get you there. You would say, why would God do that to me? Little old me. And the answer to that is really that you are far more important than you will ever know. And you have far more significance than you right now can probably even imagine. The Jesus movement is a movement of everybody. Because everybody is the most important person to somebody when it comes to them getting connected to God. That's why Jesus wants you there and why he's working right now to get you there. You know, the last few Sundays we've been on an archaeological dig here at the Prairie Chapel. And we've been using the text of the sacred scriptures to excavate the original Jesus movement. We want to do this not simply to shed light on our past, but to illumine our future. We don't want our practice of spirituality to erode into mere institutional religion. Because Jesus didn't come to start a religion. He came to start a revolution. And he didn't come to start an institution. He came to start a movement. A movement, remember, that would work itself into every culture throughout all history. A movement that would infiltrate every nook and cranny of human existence, bringing life and beauty and joy. A movement that has transforming power. And we want to uncover the spirit of the original Jesus movement that we might embrace it, that we might live it, and not become mere institutional religion, which is always impotent, which is always hypocritical, which is always ugly, even if it has the name Christian slapped on it. And today's big archaeological find is that the Jesus movement is a movement of everybody. It's a movement where everybody matters. It's a movement where everybody has a significant contribution to make. And that is just a big deal.